Welcome to Soulbirth here on Edge Radio Australia. It is just a great morning because we've got Faye in the building. And Faye, come on, you walk in, and this energy that you bring in. Come on, let's not fake it. Okay, you lift the room.
Oh,
yeah?
There you go. Thank you. It must be the colour.
It could be the colour.
Purple, yeah.
Well, I thought purple was frustration, but all right, okay. No,
it's to zen out.
Okay, so you kind of know what I'm talking about. Maybe we should get a guest on who can help us with this, right?
Well, lucky we do. We've got a perfect guest today.
Now, hiding backstage, we have the lovely Hayley. Would you like to, before I press the button and click her into, screen presence, do you want to give us a little rundown about Hayley and do the proper introduction?
Sure. Well, Hayley, I can't wait to have you on the show because Hayley is an amazing woman. I've known her for a number of years as well, since her kids were little, and now I believe that they're almost adults, getting there anyway. So they grow really quickly. But, yeah, Hayley's amazing. She's, very dynamic, beautiful mum, and has done so many different things over the years, very eclectic, a bit like me. You pick up a bit of this and a bit of that, and so she's got, she can work in so many different ways, but, works in bodywork and attunement. So she's going to tell us all about that today.
Attunement. All right. Let's bring Hayley on.
Yes. Welcome, Hayley. Thanks for coming today.
Hello, people.
Hello. Good to see you.
Yes. Look at that. Nice generic hello. Look at that. Away we go.
How are you, Hayley?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm very well. Excited to be here as well. Thanks for my beautiful introduction.
Oh, that's all right. Could have been better. I could have gone on and on forever.
Oh, and she does go on and on and on and on and on.
No, I loved it. And my kids aren't as old as that, but I'm sure they feel and hope that they are as old as that. Yeah.
I know. How old are they now, actually?
So 13 and 15 just about. So
okay. Yep. Their photos look like they're so much more, probably because I've known them since they were little tykes, and they've grown a lot.
Absolutely, and all kids just look older than what they are these days, right? It's just
they do, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
I funny enough, on Facebook I put a picture up from my life, that significant event in my life, right? Okay, and I popped it up there this morning, and guess what? It was 31 years ago, and I felt so old.
You must have been a baby then.
I was, I was too. It's me on a bearskin rug. Yeah, that's me.
Oh, jeez. So, you've been doing lots of different things, Hayley, since I last saw you, and you're living on the other side of Australia now. So whereabouts are you?
Yeah, so I'm on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. It's right in between Port Macquarie and Coffs Harbour, like in the centre there, in the centre of
beautiful.
Yeah, it's good. It's halfway between sort of Byron and the Gold Coast and Sydney. So it's good work.
Nice place to be.
Hate to see you struggle.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, she was in beautiful Margaret River before that.
Oh,
so,
geez. You know where to live.
Yeah, I've gone to all the good places, actually.
Yeah.
I had Margaret River, then Lennox Head, and then I'm here. So that's, it's kind of, I was in Crescent Head as well, which is another beautiful place near here.
Wow. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's here you're sharing the love around the, I don't know, the postcodes, but what kind of love are you sharing?
What kind of love? Yeah. When I was in Margaret River, I was sharing, Faye and I were collaborating a little bit, or attempting to, with birth, doing embodiment workshops and education around that. And I was, immersed in bodywork for mothers mostly back then as well, and doing some online counselling and things, and working with women mostly back then. And then years it's evolved, and now I'm mostly working with couples and the men or women within those partnerships. So still working alongside in a birth space, but also somatic counselling, couples therapy, and I also do internal pelvic attunement for women. So whether that's for postnatal, or just because they're feeling disconnected or have physical ailments and things that they've not been able to get any answers or clarity in with the medical system. So
so how does that work, Hayley? How does that actually, was just a session involved with that, and what's the thing behind it? I guess it's to release all the trauma and any blocks that are there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of trauma release options out there in the world. Every second person's got an offering of some kind of trauma release, but usually they're quite, let's say, like cathartic in their nature. Where I think in my opinion, and in my experience, the most profound changes happen when we're not releasing necessarily, but we're more integrating something into the person's system. So hence why when you said what topic should we speak about, and I'm receptivity, and I'm thinking to myself yesterday, what on earth did I pick that topic for? How is that relative? It only took me a minute to go, oh, okay, yes, I absolutely can see why receptivity is so important in my work, but also just within the people I work with. But it's that the therapist to client relationship is often like, I'm doing something to you, or I'm trying to bring you into a state where you have a big cry or a big release, and it's kind of like there's an agenda or a sense of forced outcome, or a desire to fix somebody and take them out of their pain. So I think why it's so effective to work with women the way I do is that we're undoing that story, and that we're trying to work in just more and arriving and integrating and being actually growing our capacity to sit in it and be in it.
Oh, fantastic. That's what it's all about.
I'm a little confused by that, to be honest. No. I've got to ask a question because, I mean, I would think it would be important to release it, okay? I think that, I'm just, are you sort of trying to build acceptance? Is that kind of where you're going on that?
Yeah, definitely. That's part of it. I definitely am not saying that there's no place for catharsis or
sure.
I think that it to me, it boils down to what potentially empowers that person the most in the moment. So if in the moment the person, let's say, pulls upon or draws upon more agency for their own life through a cathartic, like, I won't swear online.
Swear a lot. Go for it. I mean, I can't stop this one. Just Faye, just potty mouth all the way.
Sure.
Often we revert back to what the safest thing to feel is, and for a lot of people that's anger, or not all, because many people don't have access to their anger, so it's very obviously I can't generalize in this setting. Because your question is so perfect, because it highlights that every individual has a different thing that would be empowering for them. But what I do find often is there's a softer, more subtle, quieter empowerment that builds in a woman in those settings than every other opportunity that they've had to do big cathartic releases that give them a sense of release and feeling of freedom in that moment, but it doesn't necessarily remove the tension. The tension will be back within a week, So I think when you're looking for long-term sustainable softening of a person's nervous system or trauma or state of being, which is receptivity, essentially what we're talking about, that often we are putting that further and further away by having what relieves us briefly in the moment, but doesn't necessarily sustainably relieve us long term.
Yeah, and I believe that too, because when we receive something, because I believe that every trauma or experience actually is a gift for us in order to transform or to rise above whatever it is, the
but sometimes in life, I could do with less gifts. It doesn't have to be Christmas.
But that's why we came here, Aaron. When you look at the overall, my belief on Soulbirth, the soul's journey, we actually come into this life to actually to have experiences.
I agree.
We learn and we grow through the experiences that we have. And so it's inevitable that we're all going to have pain and trauma at some point. So it's how do we respond to that? And I think what Hayley's saying is beautiful, because it's like being open to receiving it and to allow it to be how it needs to be, and to not always take it away, because it can come back if you haven't done the healing underneath it to actually figure out what the gift was in that moment or that challenge. So if we can transform it and actually receive the gift that was in it, and then you kind of let it go anyway. It kind of leaves, it's not trauma anymore. You don't view it in the same way because you've moved beyond that. Does that make sense? Is that what you're saying, Hayley?
One of the best metaphors for it is the birth one, in that you think of a woman going through contractions, and if that woman is unsafe for some reason or not feeling comfortable, or there's, it's like even just a subtle environmental shift is required, there's some resistance in her to the next contraction. Her mind might be creating that resistance, or the environment might be, and the resistance is like, oh my God, no, here comes another one, like the F word, And usually that will be that resistance will create more tension in that person's experience. And whereas if there's receptivity and you do see it through that lens of like every single one of these is working for me and working with me to open me and expand me so that I can be open to birth. And obviously in life metaphor isn't birthing babies, it's birthing whatever I want to be or do or So I think the metaphor for that is
Oops.
Oh, well, it must be a very powerful metaphor. It's blowing up the internet. Check that out. All right, well, what we'll do...
she's back. Oh, look, she's been teleporting. Hayley,
a little tip. Okay, you're giving wonderful advice. My advice is pay your internet bill. Okay, come on, really.
But no, Hayley, I love the way that you brought it back to birth because, yes, that's how, like I'm used to speaking in that way as well because what you're describing is the fear, tension, pain syndrome. So when we fear something, then we tense our muscles and then you have pain because when you tense, then the oxygen's not getting to the muscles, which like the uterus, and then you have the pain. So then the pain increases your fear again. So it's a vicious cycle that goes round and round and round. Whereas one of the things with hypnobirthing is that we teach women, to actually, or doesn't have to be hypnobirthing, but when we teach relaxation and meditation in birth, it's all about going into that space that we're talking about where you're receptive, you're opening up and you're softening to the experience that you're having.
Makes sense.
Then you don't get the adrenaline rush that keeps you locked in that cycle so you can relax and flow through it.
I'm going to make a very silly, but please work with me example here, right? Yeah, I know. It's like when you go and you fall over when you're drunk. Okay.
I don't know. I haven't had that experience.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I have. Okay. Extensive research on this, right? Now, if you fall over when you're drunk or you do something and you injure yourself when you're drunk, you don't injure yourself most of the time because you're relaxed and you're okay. So you go with the flow, right? I'm not suggesting you go and do this, but I'm saying that as far as you don't tense up, do you?
I love the way you always bring examples that are so relevant and so different to my experiences.
We're very different people, I'll tell you right now, Faye.
It's great though. It always relates.
But no, well, for me, we've talked about this obviously before, and to me, like I've been the birth of my children and tried to be as involved rather as I possibly could be. And you see that tensing up, you see that pressure and that stress coming. And I didn't realise the physical side of it. I didn't realise that you're actually effectively kind of working against the process. And certainly the hospital system certainly promotes that. In a very negative way in my eyes anyway. So, if you can relax, it makes sense that when all the endorphins are going, everything's good, your muscles are relaxed and obviously making it easier for, in this particular case, childbirth, but being more receptive to improving in your life.
Flow out into life. Like when I work with couples, and I'm obviously working mostly with conflict or patterns of conflict.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we all have that with our children, with our couple, with our partners, even in friendships and family dynamics, like your availability to somebody's desire for a need or an emotional moment or something like that, the amount of resistance that's built in us to react or to be defensive or to not be present and receptive to the people that we love also creates a cycle where it's really hard to create the ease. I call it the simple life. I always say there's simpler way, there's an easier way, but it does require a level of presence and I call it, because receptivity we get sort of speak about it as if like someone's the giver and someone's the receiver, but receiving is actually an active participant, like you're participating in an exchange. It's not something you're just like passively open and having happen with you or to you. So when someone's actively listening or actively present with someone's experience, they're more likely to be in a receptive space to that person or child.
Yeah, which is why we covered being present. Last week we discussed being present, is because you can't, if you're not present, you're not open to receiving.
Well, that's right.
Both ways.
Well, there's other thing too. Of you can't teach something to someone. You can't have a lot of conversations when somebody's just, quite frankly, they're shut off to it. If they're not ready for it, it's got to be a two-way street, right?
Yeah, well, it creates the receptivity is actually what makes it a relational moment, because if you think of it like yin and yang, I always reference yin and yang in everything that I do, and it's like if someone actively takes on that pole of receptivity, they're more likely to be in a dynamic where there's polarity. And there's polarity, then you will have more chance of actually having attunement, connection, intimacy, a good outcome. You know, it's like the natural force of the universe that we're working with and not against. So, yeah, it's hard for people to be receptive. I feel, you know, what stops that is just the inner state of stress or control, or, you know, maybe relational trauma that doesn't allow them to guarantee safety, so they act and behave in such a way that's preserving their safety in that moment. And that preservation is essentially, while that's available and online, the receptivity to the other person's experience can't be so much.
Yeah. So you do work a lot with couples in this way, don't you? So
it's a very obvious thing that most people need to develop, and myself included. We all have moments of wanting to put our self-protection or living through the lens of maybe our child self first over the people that we're in front of, and we don't show up in the best ways that we probably could for that relationship. So
absolutely. And I think the relationship is what it's all about, because it's the reason we come into this life, as well as to actually to learn and grow, and other people are the reflection for us, our mirrors. So you know, being in relationship helps us to work through other parts of ourselves as well. So I love this, what you're doing as well. And how would this help? I imagine it would help enormously with couples when they get together before they conceive a child, so that they could work through these things before they even conceive, so that they're not bringing any traumas and whatever through when we're creating the blueprint for life for the next being that's coming in.
Yeah, well, that's definitely one aspect that, you know, probably the world could do with a lot more consciousness around, but mostly that's not my experience. Mostly it's, you know, either a couple that's really wanting to do it differently this time, so they show up like at the start of their relationship wanting support, and which is beautiful as well, because they're trying to birth a relationship essentially, and you know, so that comes through that lens. Or it's years and years of unconscious patterns or habits that we just revert back to, and the relationship can't evolve because of it. So we get to these crucial points where the relationship kind of has to die. Not the relationship itself, but the parts of it that aren't allowing it to evolve die.
Well, sometimes the whole relationship dies, because, I mean, I don't want to be Mr. Negative here, but like, it seems like in this day and age, when people come into a relationship, they bring more, like literally more baggage than Heathrow Airport, right? And it's just, you feel, and the beginning of the relationship where you're trying to find out where you fit, it just becomes a quagmire, quite frankly. I mean, that's certainly of modern relationships. In the old days, maybe it was better because we just kept stuff to ourselves. I don't know, tongue in cheek, obviously. But when you're dealing with couples, how much are you finding that when two people come together, that they're just bringing so much into this? Ultimately, you got to build a third story to house all the suitcases.
Yeah, I think sometimes the deepest version of that, like the hectic, most intense version of that, offers and invites the most expansion on the other side, and some couples may, many don't. So it really it's really dependent on I call the glimmers, well, in the trauma vocabulary world, we call it the glimmers. So if a couple has enough of that to draw them forward into what's on the other side of their efforts and their presence and their willingness and all of that stuff, often they'll make it through, because we have that quantum energy kind of drawing the couple forward into the future. But a lot of the time what happens is that the inner struggles and the traumas are projected so far, and there's so much self-protection, that there's not even any room for that anymore, so the relationship will be sort of suffocated and killed by the individuals inside of it. So my job is to try, that's why I like to work with couples individually as well as together, because I need to get to their coping mechanisms and their strategies for survival that maybe were adapting when they were children, and what they're bringing into the moment now, so that we can actually create more opportunity for those positive feedback loops to be sort of connecting into the brain, into that experience. So that is usually where a couple will excel, and the depth and the darkness that they're in becomes the greatest light on the other side.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What do you do with couples when it's very much a one-sided thing, where like one side of the couple is really trying to improve themselves, like deal with their past, their whatever, and big self-improvement, and the other one lives in a I don't know, a constant revolving door of relationship sabotage?
Yeah, definitely. The sabotage comes into receptivity. A lot of people, when they feel that, when they are offered something great, often that the exposure to something that they deeply most want, they can't receive because they have deep unworthiness, or sometimes just a lack of capacity to actually hold the successful side to life. They're usually programmed to struggle, or to be in conflict, or to have something to worry about, right, or to be afraid of. So the only way we can really help that is to try and bring internal safety into the individual, and the loving partner that's doing all the growing is more resourced at that point, right? They're going well, so they're more resourced, so they can actually, if it's a healthy dynamic, they can actually really support that person to lift up. And I think that in a healthy dynamic long term, that's what you would expect to see, right? We're not going to be just constantly always right and up there. We do need to kind of not leave each other behind somewhat, but also be discerning as to where you end and the next person begins, so that you're not just self-sacrificing forever also in your own world. So there's a level of self-awareness and growth that's required to even know whether you're backing out and that's the right thing, or whether you're backing out, So I think most of the time it's still important for people to show up the way you would if the relationship was ending. And in that sort of level of care and consideration, sometimes it actually saves the relationship, So it's for me, it's not about keeping couples together. It's about getting to the truth and getting to the core of the individual selves. And same with internal body work or any kind of body work. It's not like we're trying to get anywhere. We're just, learning and growing the muscle that allows us to sort of feel inwardly safe, so that we can discern these things.
Just to grab on something you just said, though, okay, and I am generalizing big time here, but men are very goal orientated, okay? So we need a task, we need to take it to completion, okay? If there's a problem, we need to fix it. How does that dynamic come into play with male-female relationships?
Yeah, it's the part of a lot of the men that I work with do tend to have this thing of like the provision comes through the lens of fixing, so the male provision is like, we have a mortgage, I go to work, this is the provision comes through money, or through the doing and the fixing, and the value of that man comes through that lens of provision, whereas and it absolutely is necessary and is honoring to the man in that relationship to have a success. Like a man is not going to go moving towards something that he thinks is an absolute going to fail, like that's why this other part that I was talking about earlier is so important. And for women, I need to work with women on that level to let them see that they're not going to be getting anywhere while they're not creating wins for their partner, and that's honoring the man's resistance to moving towards something that doesn't have a pretty good success rate, and but also in the same token, it's that the man, if he's too stuck in that the provision and the fixing, and that's all that's on offer, he's not then in an emotional provision state, then I don't think he's ready for a modern relationship on some level. I think that this day and age, and the way that the whole world is evolving emotionally, and in our awareness of our own traumas, and like say the hype words and the pop words on the internet, like we're all growing and being exposed to all these things, and sometimes that's really unhealthy, but also it is the way it is. We're not living in the old ways where provision only meant one thing. So man can feel really successful and really just as like I'm succeeding when he's emotionally providing for his woman.
Yes.
But he just doesn't have a lot of skills or experience and in actually having that happen, the wins.
Yeah.
Get that like, yes, success, nailing this, you know.
It comes back to that presence, isn't it? And understanding
sure
like what's right for each individual and where does that person particularly need to be. And, you know, what we were talking about last week about what's that person's love language as well, so that you're actually meeting that person where they're at and not projecting your own thoughts onto them. Like they don't need to be another version of you because they're not, you know, but actually supporting them at where they're at and lifting them up.
Yeah, it's like, and how much we can't really get to know our person. Like there's this thing called the polyvagal ladder, which suggests that you can only be receptive to somebody when you're regulated yourself. And it's sort of, I don't know, it's of course there's truth to that, in that the more regulated you are, the more available you're going to be receptive. Absolutely. But also it sort of doesn't touch on what I think are the most powerful, profound moments in intimacy, where someone is entirely shut down and withdrawn and frozen and can't find their way back. And they are actually still available to be receptive to their person. They're just looking for a different kind of thing that's on offer. So they're a little bit more sensitive to tone, or, you know, maybe a little touch, or you turning away from them and not facing them or something. Like there's like little subtleties that will actually warm that person back up. And it's sort of what you're talking about made me think of that, because it's like if you learn your person and there's a willingness to see them as they are and learn them, you find that you're going to kick more goals together, because you're not seeing the same lens as what you are and expecting them to be another version of you.
Yes.
So that, you know, we kind of get convinced that we all have to be regulated all the time to get connection with people. But actually, in my experience in my own life, but also with kids and parenting, and also with couples that sit in front of me about to kill each other, that is not true. That if the willingness and a curiosity, that often those like dorsal vagal shutdown states can be warmed up in the moment. And that the thought and the quest for constant regulation keeps us all kind of, I don't know, like trying to be perfect and healed and, you know, on a quest for more self-improvement all the time, which kind of bothers me a bit, which sounds funny coming from someone who offers that.
No, it's funny. Do you find, Hayley, with all your work, like I know you said you're not doing as much of the birth work now, but are you still working with couples like, you know, postnatally? Because I'm just thinking, you know, how sometimes, quite often now, because of the birth trauma increasing, that there's such a disconnect from the body and from the emotions, and it can really affect couples because there's a lot more postnatal depression because of the experience. Are you finding that the work you're doing can help in that arena as well, with, you know, healing the trauma, but also helping the couple to rebond after that?
Yeah, and I think that exactly that, and also that before the birth comes, I feel, because I can see these dynamics probably a lot easier than maybe other birth workers do. I'm always trying to encourage, you know, if someone's going to be in that intimate space with each other and with birth itself and the entity that is, that they come in pretty conscious, and a lot of the time that's not the case. It's not a healing moment. It's a whatever trauma's alive is going to be deepened by that birth, you know, and it will often pull a couple apart a lot sooner than it will bring them closer together, which is quite a shame. I've those dynamics in the middle of being a birth attendant. I sit back in birth. I'm not a midwife. I'm very much a presence and a force of presence than anything. But the amount of facilitation that I end up having to do for relational issues inside of that birth space is phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's I feel that's actually a huge important part of birth as well, because even when you say that, you know, as a birth worker, but you sit back because you're not a midwife. Well, after being a midwife, I actually work very much in that way as well, where I sit back and observe birth and hold the container for birth to unfold and pick up on all the nuances in the room, and I witness the dynamics between couples and what's going on in the room, and I can see how that then transforms into whatever it becomes later on. So I get you where you're coming from there.
not something, I'm not hired for that in that role, so I can't over function. I find that the one way to disempower people is to start as a facilitator, starting to overfunction. There's too much overfunction happening in therapy, in my opinion. So
what do you mean by that specifically?
So, people, especially in counselling or, people, let's say helping support people in any way. There's a billion ways we can be a helping person. But we get a bit attached to the outcomes at times, or we're not really kind of present as to what it's bringing up for us and keeping our shit separate to the room or the people. So I think that over-functioning, it's really kind of an avoidance in itself of what the reality is for that environment, what the outcome, and it's like it's out of my scope to step in and do certain things. So I respect that boundary. They haven't hired me for that, and I, if they needed that, then, especially in a counselling space, I would go, okay, maybe I would refer you now, because it's going to be supportive to you if I'm within the containment of my own scope and my own boundaries.
And I'm glad you brought up that other point too, because as birth workers, I'm just using that because this is my experience as well. But, I know from many, many years working in that area that, there's a lot of vicarious trauma that people, as birth workers take on, because you're witnessing so much, take it on, and you don't, unless you take it upon yourself to go and, help heal that aspect of yourself as well, or see someone like yourself and actually, deal with your stuff, because you don't want to take your stuff into the birthing space and have it affect the other people, the birthing woman. So I'm always an advocate for anybody who's going to be present at the birth needs to be there 100% fully for the woman, and not have their stuff, their issues, if they've got major issues, especially around birth, to actually get their work done on themselves or through themselves, before they show up at birth for another person, because it's a big thing to hold space for another person.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And if you bring your own trauma to it,
leave your crap at the door, right? Like, seriously, it's dead simple.
That mother is trying to go on a journey to be receptive to the baby, and can't do that and tune in that way if she's managing. And a lot of women do this. As women, as we do, we try and create the safety we need by the external, focusing on the external. And I see that a lot as well, and in that I have to try and guide women to drop that level of control and find that safety within, and just go do what they need to do regardless of the environment, and super hard task, and we could make it a lot bloody easier on them if we also showed up in the way that you're explaining right now.
Exactly.
You just used a word there that kind of it triggers me. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It triggers me in a good way.
In a good way.
In a good way. I'm just having some fun. From this point of view, okay, there's some people in life who are obviously control freaks, right? Okay, and I had a friend who is an absolute off the charts control freak who was having her baby, okay, and because she wanted to micromanage every single human being there, she had, you talk about relaxing and all kind of carry on. I'm going to back away from being graphic. She had to have a lot of repair work done because of the fact that she struggled so much to give birth, right? Yeah. Okay. And I tend to think that anxiety is probably the wrong word, but that pressure that tension and pressure she put on herself may have had something to do with that. I'd love to know your thoughts.
No, I agree. Well, whenever somebody's tension, or because you're thinking if she's busy trying to control the scenario, and I've seen it a lot with women birthing, that they're actually too busy telling everybody else in the room what they want them to do, whatever. They're not actually dropping into the birthing space and relaxing and surrendering to the process. So they're tensing their muscles more, and they're more likely to end up with trauma, as in physical trauma, because of their muscles tearing or different things, just because of the tension. When you relax, you stretch up and, it flows a lot easier. What about you? What do you reckon, Hayley?
Well, while you were saying that, I was just thinking about kids, how we respond to kids and in the, like we've got that control that's usually like, whether it's teachers or parents and things like that, where it's like if they feel they're out of control, they'll control more. So there's the need to control just comes from a feeling of unsafety and a lack of vulnerability, actually, because the adult was able to say, I feel vulnerable because of this, and here's my, like, exposing my vulnerability, the safety within them would increase, and the people around them would be able to attune to them a lot more. We'd be able to actually prioritize their safety, so they didn't need to control so much. So when you were speaking about that, I was just thinking of parenting, or, you know, children. It's like, as soon as we have anything that comes that we feel like we have to control, we lose that opportunity with them as well, where we don't get to have them learn how to cultivate safety and express their vulnerability and be met and heard and seen, and we just pass the buck down to the next generation. Right?
Yeah, no,
with children now, though, I think that they're so wrapped in cotton wool, and they don't have experiences anymore. They don't learn consequence. I mean, to be absolutely frank, I think we've just made such a mess of this generation. Absolute mess.
Again, that comes back to the control, isn't it? The overreach, overseeing.
Yeah.
It's just inward and out there. And you can see in the greater scheme
totally
of things.
Proudly Generation X here, okay? Free range parenting 101. It was great, right? You know, we learned consequences. We did learn consequences. I mean, I just saw somebody sent me a Facebook thing about the I don't know, the merry-go-round, kind of the turley things, whatever, that they used to have at parks, right? And anyway, somebody got there with a moped, and they're putting the moped and they're making it go really fast, and all the kids are going on there. So the thing's just
you're hanging on for a dear life.
The kids are all flying off, right?
I remember that.
And I did that.
Me too.
Okay. We befriended the local kid with the moped because, hey, at 12, he's 17, he's got a moped, you know, we need those wheels, right? And we learnt the consequences of life, because it hurts when you fly off. But my God, it was a lot of fun beforehand, right?
My dad always says, you never get hurt if you don't do anything.
Damn straight, exactly right. So from that point of view, kids these days, they don't have that. Parents have just wrapped them in cotton wool, bubble wrap, the whole box and dice.
That is that we've gone from one extreme to the other, where we've been avoided, disconnected, and not emotionally attuned at all, to the point of neglect, like our generation.
I thought it was, no, I didn't say neglect, but there you go.
Yeah, but then also now we've gone, and the trauma of some of the parents in, you know, this generation kind of go, well, I don't want to hurt put my kids through that. I want to be more emotionally available or there for them. So I'll overcompensate, and then there's more enmeshment now in the other. And so we've gone from, I think, one extreme to the other in some way. I'm not saying that you weren't loved and cared for by your parents. That's not what I mean.
I was adored.
Yeah.
Sure you were. Who wouldn't love and adore you, Sharon?
I'm rolling my eyes.
The level, I'm speaking more just to like the level of emotional awareness and intimacy that can be created in a relationship. Like if we go between like, you'll be right, suck it up, don't even, and not really show any tenderness, and then we go showing too much and overcompensating, I don't think we're really getting it in either of those examples.
No. So, the pendulum swinging. Yeah. It's just got to come back to find the balance in the middle.
Yeah.
And then,
and I think a lot of in their parenting life, they do tend to experience, or maybe need to experience, what it's like to find that balance in the middle of what's actually healthy for the relationship, where it's not overcompensating and it's not withdrawing. It's just a healthy, like, exposed love that we can be also empowering the kids, and also teaching them from example and healthy things, ways of being. Like, there's a middle ground there that I think we don't give enough airtime to, because we debate over which version is healthier, and I don't think are actually ideal. I think there's a whole new version that we could be putting energy toward, really.
Oh, well, that's what we're here to learn.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, Hayley, you're coming over back to WA shortly, aren't you, in another month or two? So,
yes, I have.
What are you up to when you're here?
Got it all sorted. I'll be seeing clients out of Margaret River Acupuncture, the centre there in, can't remember the street now, but it's in the middle of town there somewhere. And I'm going to be, seeing internal pelvic attunement clients for women. So those sessions are 3 hours long, and then we have another hour of talk therapy post or pre that in-person appointment. So that's going to be on the weekends, the whole month of July. And
I've got to ask. I'm sorry, I have to ask. What in the world is pelvic attunement?
Yeah. So, okay, in brief, I'll give you the man answer, which is the exact.
I need that one.
Yeah,
Yep.
yes.
Right. So the first hour is somatic counselling, and we go through and unpack the whole woman's relationship to her sexuality or births or femininity or anything that is required. And then the second hour is a little bit more of a somatic embodiment experience where we play with states of receptivity and aliveness. So I help the woman sort of explore curiously around what's available within her and how we can internally create safety. The third hour is an internal, let's say, map or of feeling in what is coming through when we have that opportunity, when we're met without force or without any agenda or without anything expected of her. What unravels and where does she land, So a lot of the time there's actual things that are obviously in that woman, whether it's emotional or physical or hormonal, or there's reasons for her to be there that she's hoping to improve upon. But that last hour is just as curious and open as the first two, in that we can't pretend we know exactly.
Yeah, right.
And so we can be doing a whole heap of different things internally where we can be just emotionally connecting, and that's all that's available in that moment, or we can be actually working with fascia and different nerve pathways and physical ailments and things that have gone wrong post-birth or through sexual trauma. So all of the above, and it's segmented into 3 sections on purpose, and then we have that post-session chat so we can actually integrate what's happened and what's come up in the session.
Yeah, wow, sounds great. So, and are you spending any time in Perth as well, or is it all purely down south?
My beautiful friend Lisa Tassel, who I'm trying to work out whether I might be able to come up and see her in the last week, or she might come down and see me, but I don't know yet. But I'd love to find a space to work out of and maybe do a Perth as well. But at this stage, I'm just going to be in Margaret River for the 4 weekends. And yes, couples somatic attunement sessions are fully clothed, counselling, sitting on the lounge, but we don't get stuck in the head. I help people to do exactly the things that I've been speaking about right now in this session, but real life in a live setting. So
fantastic. So if somebody wants more information or wants to book with you when you're here, do they go to your website or contact you directly?
Yeah, I offer free calls to people as well, because obviously you need to sometimes ask questions or just get a feel for the therapist, and vice versa, So I offer that so that they can connect with me through their human to human first, and then if it feels aligned, then we go to the next step.
Oh, that sounds great. And we've dropped all your details in the chat underneath as well, so people can contact you if they want to catch up with you while you're here. And, of course, you work all around while you're over east at the moment. So
a lot
anybody can contact you.
So I'm down in Wollongong a lot. I've been to Tassie before. I would go again. Have an invitation to go down there soon. I'm up in Byron a bit. Newcastle, New South Wales, Queensland. I'm open to collaborate and create. Something I am passionate about is living in the Pilbara for 10 years, or in the WA for 10 years, but the Pilbara for 6. There wasn't modalities available to women in regional areas. So I really like the idea of being hosted and collaborated with to bring stuff like this into regional Australia.
Wow. There you go, putting it out there. Anybody up there in that region want to call Hayley?
Yeah, I feel passionate about that, because I remember that I was like young mum, birthing, pregnant, alone, feeling a bit like I could have done with that, and and creating it by running women's groups and things up there with Lisa. But and I'm sure it's changed in that there's more available in these days. This was 15 years ago, but I do like the idea of that we can bring the work into the women rather than having them travel out to the surf spots and the cities and things like that. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're almost out of time.
We are almost out of time, but I was a little lost in that. I'm thinking to myself, there's so much information on it, and I really commend you about wanting to take it to the Pilbara. I think that's an important thing. I really and something that's just skirted over so often, okay, and undervalued. And there's so many men and women obviously who have got well, there's probably a lot of trauma, like there's trauma everywhere, but certainly when it comes to birth, you know, that's all about women, let's face it. So yeah, the fact that you're taking it out there, I really commend you for that.
And it's all about women. However, it impacts the whole family.
Of course. Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And the community. So thank you so much, Hayley, for joining us today. Like, it's just, I'm so glad that you could join us. And hopefully I'll catch up with you when you come over to Perth or to WA.
Yeah. Be nice to have an in-person connection too. Well overdue.
Yeah, we'll have to get you in here on the seat. If you've got time, come in and actually say hello.
I'm down for that. We can
You're very welcome indeed. All righty. Thank you very much for everybody. I really appreciate this. Hayley, it's just great talking to you. And as so you can check all the socials there. You know, do the all like, subscribe, all that kind of thing. Tell your friends. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends. If you didn't, shut your mouth. Right? Okay, that's it. Okay, simple as that. But no, honestly, jump on the socials and chase up Hayley. And obviously, I believe you've got a website and all sorts of links and goodies there. So jump on that. Thank you for being part of Soulbirth here on Edge Radio Australia.
Thanks, Hayley. Bye.